Hello everyone and welcome back to the YouTube channel of BeingACCA. This is Tushita Gupta, ACCA affiliate, and in this video we are going to be continuing with our PM chapter-wise revision. So we have so far revised 8 chapters. This is the revision for chapter number 9, which talks about risk and uncertainty. So this is a very important syllabus area. The concepts that you understand over here are going to help you a lot while solving the numericals, as well as writing the theory portion that comes from this topic. So if you talk about the name of the chapter, it has two components. First is risk and second is uncertainty. So let's try to break these down into simpler languages so that we understand what they really mean. So risk is basically where you will have a number of possible outcomes. So a number of possible outcomes, and at the same time you also know the probability of each outcome. So probability is known. Now when it comes to uncertainty, over here also you have a number of possible outcomes, but over here the probability is not known. That means the thin line of difference between risk and uncertainty is they are both scenarios where we have a number of possible outcomes, but over here in risk we know the probabilities of the each outcomes, and in uncertainty we do not know the probability of these outcomes happening. Now let's talk about a few types of decision makers. Risk and uncertainty falls under the topic of decision making. So there are different types of decision makers. First of all, we talk about risk seeker. So as the name suggests, risk seeker is a person who is seeking risk. He is optimistic and thinks about the best outcome. So he will think whatever is going to happen, it's going to be the best. So if you have a probability, the possibility of earning, let's suppose $100,000, so risk seeker is going to think we are going to actually earn those profits. Now we talk about a risk averse decision maker. Risk averse, as the name suggests, he is a person who takes into account the risks. So he is a conservative person. Conservative person basically means he thinks about the worst outcome. So he is the opposite of the risk seeker. Now another type of decision maker can be risk neutral. So this person, as the name suggests, is going to think about what is going to happen most likely. So most likely action. And then the fourth type which we have is a sore loser. A sore loser is that sort of a decision maker who always regrets. So as you know, a sore loser is that person who cannot digest losing. He will continuously regret, why did I lose. So that kind of a person is a sore loser. Then we come out to sensitivity analysis under this syllabus area. Sensitivity analysis basically is a type of an analysis where we are taking each uncertain factor turn by turn. Uncertain factor turn by turn. And we are calculating what change will there be if that thing is changed. So for example, there are multiple factors, and let's suppose we are calculating how much sales are we going to achieve. So if I change the level of demand, then how much is my profit going to increase or decrease? That is what sensitivity analysis will try to evaluate. Another thing is that your maximum possible change will often be expressed as a percentage. So in the percentage terms, usually this will be calculated, this will be expressed, and it cannot be used for individual units or selling prices, etc. So basically the formula that you will use to find out how sensitive your profit is, that you will divide your profits with the change in your variable and multiply that by 100 to arrive at the percentage. Now let's also discuss what are a few advantages, the strengths of this analysis, and what are a few weaknesses of this analysis. So when it comes to the strengths, it is not complicated. The presentation is suitable, to facilitate the judgment. So suitable presentation to help you in making the decision. Then another benefit is that you are identifying the important areas, the areas which are crucial for the for the success of your project. So identification of areas crucial for the success of the project. Right? Then we talk about what the weaknesses of this analysis are. First of all, basically when we talk about weaknesses, it's going to be mostly about the assumptions that it has. So this analysis is assuming that variables will be changed independently. That means one by one the variables will be changed. However, in real life, there may be scenarios that multiple variables are changing at the same time, because we do not live in a perfect world. There is always a possibility that things are going to change. So assumes changes to variables independently. Then let's talk about another weakness. Another weakness is that it's only identifying how far a variable will go, and it will not talk about the probability. So does not talk about the probability of the change. Another weakness which we can discuss for sensitivity analysis is that it provides information on the basis of which decisions can be made, but it will not always point to the correct decision directly. So does not point to correct decision directly. Right? So these are a few strengths and weaknesses of the sensitivity analysis. Now let's talk about a concept called simulation. So when it comes to a simulation, basically what we mean by a simulation is that it is a technique, it is a modeling technique which will show you the effect of more than one variable changing at the same time. So over here in the weaknesses, we were only taking variables, changing variables turn by turn. But over here, it'll change multiple variables, changing multiple variables at the same time. Then usually you'll find it often that it is used in capital investment appraisal. Capital investment appraisal. Then let's also talk about a few drawbacks that this technique has. So what are the drawbacks of simulations? So the drawbacks will be it's not a technique for decision making, but it's only a technique that will help you get more information about the possible outcomes. More info about possible outcomes, not a decision making technique. Another drawback, if I say, would be that models can become extremely complex. So, simulation is not something that everyone will be able to, calculate or even understand. Another disadvantage will be the time and cost. So, it takes a lot of time and it is costly. Another thing is that the probability distributions may be difficult to formulate. It will always not be possible to find out what's the probability of what variables changing, and now that multiple variables are changing at the same time, so probability distributions may be difficult to formulate. So this is what we talk about the simulation. Now we move on to the next concept, which is on expected values. Expected values. Now, if I talk about expected values, basically it is the sum of all the weighted average of all possible outcomes. So all probabilities multiplied by the outcomes is what you will get. The sum of all of these will give you the expected value. And it is, you can also note down that this is useful for a risk neutral decision maker. Risk neutral decision makers. Why? Because over here we are taking into account all types of probabilities, what all can happen. And you should also note that this should not be used under one-off circumstances. So wherever you're making a decision which you only have to make once, it's not something repetitive, then this is not suitable, because probabilities are more suitable when it's about a recurring event. So it's not very suitable for one-off circumstances. Now let's talk about a few advantages. What advantages does it offer? First of all is that it is a simple calculation. Simple, and again this makes your decision making easy. So easy decision making. Another thing is that it is taking uncertainty into account. Now let's talk about a few drawbacks or some disadvantages of expected values. So the disadvantages, the list is a big one. First of all, probabilities are only an estimate. So it may or may not be true, and probabilities are usually subjective. I may think that probability is 0.3, you may think that it's no 0.35. So these are subjective, and again does not help with, not suitable for one-off projects. As we were just discussing above, one of projects is something which should not be the decisions should be not made for one of projects using expected values, and this is not useful for all types of decision makers. Like we were saying, this is useful for risk neutral decision makers, so not useful for all decision makers. Another thing is that there is no indication of the dispersion of outcomes. So that means, let me just explain that. No dispersion, no indication of the dispersion. So probably, if 0.5 is, let's suppose, 20,000, 0.5 says it's going to be 40,000. So, my expected value is going to be 30,000, but who knows, my actual outcome could actually be 40,000. So over here, I do not get any indication about the dispersion, that how far my real outcome can actually go. Then another disadvantage is that it may not correspond to actual possible outcomes, may not correspond to actual possible outcomes. So with this, we are done with the concept of expected values. Now let's talk about payoff tables. Payoff tables. So this is also a technique which is useful to take decisions. So it can be a way to represent and analyze a scenario where there are a range of possible outcomes. So range of outcomes, and you can say that variety of responses. There are multiple ways in which I can respond to these outcomes. So this is where payoff tables will be helpful. Now, using the payoff tables, there are three decision rules which we have. First is the maximax rule. As the name suggests, we are choosing the maximum out of the maximum outcomes. So it involves selecting that alternative which maximizes the maximum payoff. So usually it's suitable for optimists. Optimists are those people who are always thinking positive. So optimists, risk-seeking people, these are the people who seek to achieve the best results if the best happens. And the drawback is that it is too optimistic and it ignores probabilities. Ignores probabilities. Now, another decision rule that we have is the maxi-min rule. So like the name suggests, we're selecting the maximum, the maximum out of the minimum payoff that we can achieve. So maximizes the minimum payoff that can be achieved. And like, as you are seeing, we are thinking about the most negative things. So over here, we are looking at the worst possible outcome. And out of these worst possible, he's trying to maximize that what out of, if everything goes south, what is the best that I can get in such a situation. So this will be used by people who are risk averse and who are pessimists. Great. So with this, we are done with this decision making technique. Also a few drawbacks. So if I talk about the drawbacks are that it is too much conservative. That means it is taking too much, it's not taking risk at all. So too much conservative, and again ignores probability. Now let's talk about the last decision rule. This is the mini max regret rule. Now, as the name suggests, it's mini max. So out of the maximum regret, you are minimizing the regret. So this will minimize the maximum regret, right? So this is useful for people who are risk averse. And this is, a technique for a sore loser. The one person who does not like to lose, if he loses, he becomes very sad, he cries all the time. So this is for a sore loser who does not want to make the wrong decision. Regret, if we talk about what does regret mean over here, is that it is defined as the opportunity loss because you made the wrong decision. So the drawback over here remains the same, that it ignores the probabilities. Now, with this, we are done with the three types of decision rules when it comes to payoff tables. Now, let's talk about another technique, which is called decision trees. Now, decision trees are basically, as the name suggests, tree, it's going to be a diagrammatic representation. Representation of what? Of a problem wherein you can take multiple types of decisions. So all possible course of action are represented, and by taking that action, so probably if I take Action 1, action 2. This is going to be the outcome and this is going to be the outcome. This is a very small example which I have shown. You can refer to the study text if you want to look at a more better example. Let's talk about the last thing now, value of information. Value of information basically means how much more profit I can earn if I have the best possible information, if I know everything about the business that I'm doing. So value of information will always be the expected profit with information minus your expected profit without the information. So how much extra can I earn if I know the information is what will be the value of my information. So with this, we are done with chapter number 9 of your syllabus. The next chapter is going to be chapter 10, which talks about budgeting. I am warning you in advance that it's going to be a bigger recording for you to watch because it's a lengthy chapter. We're going to be discussing things in detail, so stay tuned for that. I hope that the revision series is helping you, and I'll catch you in the next one.